On May 23rd, 2024, Clarence Thomas, was interviewed by Brother Hussein Karimi, one of the organizers of the successful People's Conference for Palestine, which was held May 24th through the 26th in Detroit, Michigan. The interview was intended to produce a video statement to be aired during a Labor for Palestine workshop at the conference. An edited statement was finalized and submitted. The presentation was not shown as planned due to an unexpected Palestinian guest who is a member of the Palestinian General Federation of Trade Unions, who made an unexpected visit, and the entire program was adjusted to accommodate their speaking. It was disappointing, especially in view of ILWU Local 10's important Palestinian solidarity actions taken going on nearly 2 decades. Here's the edited version of the interview in its entirety. It was thought that it was very timely to have labor voice heard during the continuing genocidal assault upon the Palestinian population in Gaza by the Israeli military aided by the US military-industrial complex. During the 39th ILWU convention this past June, Local 10 submitted a resolution calling for longshore workers to refuse to handle military cargo to Israel. The union has taken such actions against military hunters in Chile and in El Salvador. The resolution was resoundingly defeated. On July 2nd, 2024, 12 U.S. government employees who've publicly resigned in protest of Biden's administration's Gaza's policy issued a joint statement titled Service and Dissent, condemning the continuous flow of U.S. arms to Israel and more. Peace is union business. I repeat, peace is union business. Permanent ceasefire now, free Palestine.
Well, thanks, Clarence, for joining us. You know, the panel name is The Role of Labor Unions in the Palestinian Struggle. Local 10, of course, has a rich history of solidarity with working people, not just in the United States, but across the world, and a rich history of internationalism. We hope today that you can speak to the ILWU's history of internationalism as a union and popularizing it in the labor movement writ large, around the issues of, back in the struggle against South African apartheid to now around Palestine.
First of all, I'd like to extend solidarity greetings to the people that are attending the People's Conference on Palestine in Detroit, Michigan. It's an honor to be a part of the program. My name is Clarence Thomas. I am a third generation retired longshoreman, member of the International Longshore and Warehouse Union Local 10 in San Francisco. I'd like to read something in order to give some context as to why I'm here today. The ILWU has a long history of being interested in and supportive of Palestine liberation, going back as early as the mid-1980s. And this was the direct result of ILWU having a longer history of solidarity with the people in South Africa fighting against apartheid. But in order to start at the beginning, the history of the ILWU, the record of its origins and traditions, is about workers who built a union that is democratic, militant, and dedicated to the idea that solidarity with other unions and other workers is the key to achieving economic security and a peaceful world. And so when you begin to say, well, what does that mean? What it means is that our union is anti-imperialist, anti-colonialists. We have fought against white supremacy. I like to say that we have demonstrated our support for the working class and the oppressed at home and abroad. Very quickly, the ILWU has been involved with actions at the point of production, which means where we work. Longshore workers on the West Coast, ILWU members are responsible for the loading and unloading of maritime cargo on the West Coast. And Local 10 is the only predominantly African American local on the West Coast, which is also the home local of the legendary ILWU founder, Harry Bridges. Going back to 1935, after Italy had invaded Ethiopia, the ILWU was in the process of loading nickel and other metals for Italy. And there were a number of people from the community who were protesting this act of imperialism on the part of the Italian government. Mussolini was in power at that time. And they came out and they had what I would call a blockade. And they picketed in front of that particular terminal where this work was going on. And ILWU members did not cross that picket line because one of our 10 guiding principles calls for us respecting all picket lines as if they were our own. Fast forward to 1939, after Japan had invaded Manchuria, we were in the process of loading scrap iron to Japan. Another blockade took place. But this time, our own leadership and Harry Bridges said, we're not going to send this particular cargo to Japan because it could very well likely be used on American GIs should the United States get involved with the axis of evil in Asia. And so it was. Longshore workers did not cross that picket line. And there were consequences as a result of those actions. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt sent a letter and scolded Harry Bridges and said that the ILWU needed to stay out of matters involving U.S. foreign policy. And Bridges' position was that it was our right as citizens to do such things. And that is the reason why we have been called the conscience of the labor movement. ILWU, specifically Local 10, where my grandfather came into the union in 1944 and my dad in 1965. This is a union that has taken positions on the matter of all forms of discrimination. Bridges said that discrimination was a tool of the bosses. The internationalism comes into play because of what longshore workers do. The loading and unloading of maritime cargo from all over the world. In 1962, on a Sunday, there were a group of community people that had come out to protest South Africa. Longshore workers, once again, did not cross that picket line. The ILWU had taken positions against apartheid, but it was pretty much symbolic. But all of that changed in 1976 when a Black longshore worker by the name of Leo Robinson wrote a resolution subsequent to the Soweto massacres in 1976, where he called for the boycott of South African cargo by the ILWU. This was a very, very bold and compelling resolution. And one of the marks of our democracy is that an individual like Leo Robinson, who was a rank and filer, wrote that resolution. And it permeated all the way up to our Longshore Convention in Coast I should say caucus, which is the highest ruling body of our longshore industry. There were a number of activities that took place between 1976, culminating in 1984, when longshore workers refused to handle South African cargo, specifically at a vessel called the Net Lloyd Kimberley, for 11 days. In between that time, there was an organization founded called the Southern Africa Liberation Support Committee, the first time an organization of labor had been established by rank and filers, specifically for the purpose of fighting against apartheid. This action with the fight against apartheid took the shape of many endeavors. The most demonstrative and radical, well, of course, was the refusal to handle South African cargo. It also meant that people who were members of the ANC came to speak at our union hall. Films were shown. Rank and filers wanted to know, well, why is it that we're taking this action on the part of South Africa? What does that have to do with our pork chops here? Meaning, how is it related to the contract and to workers? Those same entities in South Africa, using the excuse that we're trying to change things in terms of ending apartheid by engaging and trying to influence the government. All of that was a lie. They were there to exploit Black workers. And so people got a sense of that. But nothing could have explained it more to longshore workers than when Nelson Mandela was released from prison and spoke at the Oakland Coliseum. And he acknowledged the ILWU, specifically Local 10, for refusing to unload South African cargo for 11 days. And the only thing that ended that particular boycott, we violated Taft-Hartley, we violated our own contract. But when thousands of dollars in fines were going to be levied against the rank and file leadership of that strike, as well as the officers, that's what ended it. But Nelson Mandela received word about the boycott while he was on Robben Island. And when he spoke to thousands who were onlookers and who were witness to that great event, and he acknowledged the ILWU Local 10, because he, as the world understood, the importance of shipping. Shipping is the mother's milk of capitalism. And so when you disrupt ships, you interfere also with trucking schedules, rail schedules, and it disrupts the international global economy. Not only did longshore workers engage in that activity, but they also engaged in something that is very important to the Palestinian struggle at this time. BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions. All of those things came into play during the ILWU struggle against apartheid. We boycotted ships, yes. We also divested our pension funds from companies that did business with South Africa. Former Congressman Ron Dellums, whose father was a member of ILWU Local 10, and whose uncle was a stalwart in the labor movement for Black folks. He was C.L. Dellums. When Dellums was congressman representing the Bay Area, he put forward legislation calling for sanctions. They were vetoed once by Ronald Reagan, but the Congress overrode that veto. We understood the importance of people being able to mobilize on all fronts. I'm proud to say that I was one of the first ILWU members to be involved with the Block the Boat activity, which took place in 2014. But it's also important to mention that before 2014 happened, in 2010, one of the first boycotting of an Israeli shipping line, one of the largest, it's called ZIM, Z-I-M, took place at the Port of Oakland. And the reason why it took place was that it was in response to the massacre that was initiated by Israeli commandos on the Mother Marmara. It was a flotilla, a Turkish flotilla, on its way to Gaza carrying humanitarian supplies. Israeli commandos killed 10 people with impunity on international waters. And for the first time, there was a picket line made up of labor, Palestinian activists, social justice activists, and most importantly, the ILWU Local 10, which, following in its tradition of not crossing that picket line when some 800 members of the community showed up to protest those murders and the violence perpetuated against the Palestinian people in Gaza specifically. That was in 2010. But I am so proud that I had the opportunity to meet a sister and comrade of mine, who many of you who are attending this conference today are familiar with. Her name is Laura Kiswani, Executive Director of the Arab Resources Organizing Center. We met because she wanted to meet the ILWU Local 10 leadership for the purpose of explaining to that leadership how they wanted the support of the ILWU in the same fashion that the locals supported the anti-apartheid struggle. I was a part of that great day in August 2014, when thousands marched at the Port of Oakland in order to meet and to stop the disembarkment or the unloading of cargo on a Zim vessel. In order to stop or to undermine or mitigate the political victory of the community that had made the call and had people to come out for the demonstration at the Port of Oakland. Zim decided to rendezvous in the Monterey Bay until the following day, trying to not give that victory to the community. It had to finally come in. But what was specifically designated to have a one-day action turned into a 4-day affair. It was absolutely gratifying for so many of our younger members to be able to connect the dots from what happened in the 1970s and the 1980s to 2014. Brother Leo Robinson and others were so successful in making the connection between the treatment of Black people in South Africa and the treatment of Palestinians by the Israelis, specifically through Zionism. So the ILWU was able to talk and to gain support for resolutions going back to the 1980s at our conventions. And they were also able to reaffirm that in the 1990s. Brother Leo Robinson was the first ILWU member to write a position paper on the importance of the ILWU in the world, recognizing the leadership of the PLO as a legitimate leadership of the Palestinian people. Today, I'm wearing a t-shirt along with my kippah. Underneath that is a t-shirt of people who were members of the Black Panther Party. I thought it was appropriate to wear this shirt because in the 1970s, Huey P. Newton met Chairman Yasser Arafat. They met. And Huey was able to make the connection between the Palestinian struggle and the struggle of African people throughout the world. It was very important. We have to learn from those lessons. But just let me say this in terms of why you're asking me to be on this panel today. the importance of labor in the struggle for the liberation of Palestinian people, ending the onslaught, ending the mass murder and genocide on the part of the Zionists with the backing of U.S. imperialism and companies such as Raytheon, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, all benefiting from the murder of women and children and innocent people in Gaza, in the Palestinian territory. Labor needs to understand that support for the Palestinian struggle is a working class issue. I understand that some of the unions today don't have the rich and, let's face it, radical tradition of the ILWU. I understand that. But they still need to understand that these are working class people. And they should also be able to understand the importance of international solidarity. We're so backward in this country that we think that May Day is a communist holiday. While socialist countries do celebrate that day, its origin started here in the United States of America for the struggle for the 8-hour workday. But that history has been hidden from us. And I'm proud to say that we in ILWU Local 10 have played a very important role in reclaiming that history, which is why just this month, we did not work May Day as we have not worked it in the last 20 years, 2 decades. No work at the port for 8 hours on the day side. No work at the port on the night side for 24 hours in solidarity with the Palestinian struggle. Solidarity is not an empty slogan. Let me clarify that. Today, the Zim lines does not come to the West Coast. Longshore workers make their living loading and unloading vessels. But I, along with others, are mindful that longshore workers in Gaza, they can't work and haven't worked in decades. This is not all right. We choose to believe in what's right and not who's right. And what's right for the American worker is to stand up. When we stand up to support the Palestinians, we are also helping ourselves. It is our tax dollars that are going to commit these murders and these atrocities. Monies that could be spent on healthcare here, monies that could be spent on education. I was recently in Cuba just a few weeks ago. But the blockade and them being put on the state sponsor of terrorism, they have one of the finest medical schools in the world. They even have American students going there for free. But yet our students have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to come out. I'm bringing all this up because of the fact that we could have a better system. We can participate in the liberation of Gaza at the same time while we are also creating the emancipation of the working class for ourselves. This is in our interest, which is why I have to say something with regards to what's going on with the students all across the United States of America. I am so proud of what they are doing. It reminds me so much of my days when I was at San Francisco State and was part of the longest student strike in American history for the establishment of a Black Studies and a School of Ethnic Studies and open enrollment to increase the number of working class and Black students. That struggle went on for 4.5 months. And as I stand today, reading every day how students are being attacked by the police, the same way we were in 1968 by the tax squad in San Francisco. How we were being attacked by Ronald Reagan, who was the governor at that time. How we were being attacked by various right-wing forces. And young people today are seeing it themselves. We have to ask ourselves, why is it that young people seem to be so uh, inclined to understand the struggle. I think I have an answer for that. Young people today see the contradictions of capitalism. They see that once they graduate from college, they still are not guaranteed a job. They understand that even if they do get jobs, they may have to take jobs that they don't want to work. California State University, Long Beach, has been hijacked by the Boeing company. Boeing thinks that that's their private plantation so that they can train people to go into being complicit in the murders of people in Gaza. They've hijacked public education, corporations, the military industrial complex. These young people are putting their academic careers on the line because they understand they cannot sit idly by and watch this genocide take place. And they've also learned the lessons of boycott, divestment, and sanctions. They work. The Israeli government is very concerned about BDS. After we took action against them in 2010, something very interesting took place. The Israeli consulate wanted to come to speak to our executive board to tell us the error of our ways. We said, hell no. We don't speak to the Israeli government. Our actions speak for themselves. They understand the lessons of the anti-apartheid struggle very clearly, very clearly. So I think the inspiration that the labor movement needs to take from young people today who are demonstrating some commencement exercises have been canceled, students have been brutalized. At UCLA, the state and the city has turned a blind eye to the Zionists and the neo-Nazis who attacked UCLA students when no one has been arrested. We have to be on the right side of history. I'm going to close with this. We have a resolution that's going before, well, I say we, meaning the ILWU. I'm retired, but I still have a voice in the union. I can't vote. But there's a resolution that's going before the convention, which starts on the 17th of June. And it's calling for ILWU members to refuse to handle military cargo destined for Israel. This is not the first time that we've done this. We've done it in the 1970s when the juntas in El Salvador, and more specifically, the actions taken on the part of the government in Chile after the assassination of Salvador Allende. Longshore workers in Local 10 refused to ship bomb parts and other equipment connected to military cargo to the state of Chile. We've done this before. I can't say how the delegates are going to vote. We're hoping that they will do the right thing. We know that people are very much concerned about genocide, but we also understand that the United States government and its genocide committed against the Native Americans, the enslavement of African Americans, the enslavement of the American worker, their anti-union history. All of this is related. This is why the right wing doesn't want the real history to be taught in schools. But it's so important at this time for us to step forward and to make a sacrifice Solidarity is not an empty slogan. It means that you have to give something up. I have not heard one longshore worker complain about losing work as a result of supporting Palestinians in the ship. I have not heard one person complain about that because they understand that that was their opportunity to make a contribution to the struggle. And other workers must step up and do the same thing. Yes, this is a very momentous time and a very critical part of our history. Labor has a very important role to play, and it all starts with rank and filers of conscience coming forward, writing resolutions. It starts with resolutions. They should not be afraid. These are our tax dollars. These are our sisters and brothers who are being killed in broad daylight with the help of our tax dollars and our government that does not represent us. By standing up and supporting the Palestinians, we are standing up and supporting ourselves. For what kind of a future do we want? A country that does not invest in its youth has no future. And I'm glad to see these young people setting the example. I would just like to say one thing before I close out today. I hope that one of the things that transpires at the conclusion of this conference is that people will look at the ILWU Local 10 in particular as being a symbol and a guiding light for others to follow. We've taken many, many radical positions and have paid a price for that. But part of what has given Local 10 its revolutionary character, yes, I say revolutionary. Why do I say that? Because shipping is so critical to the global economy. And the world knows that. And when we have longshore workers in other parts of the United States of America and the world standing up and refusing to handle military cargo or any cargo that is facilitating the murder and genocide against our Palestinian sisters and brothers, we need to step up and step forward. There may be some things that I missed today, but I'm certain if there's anything you want to add, Brother Hussein, I'm glad that you have made this possible for me to be a part of this great conference today. It's very important. The eyes of the world are on all of us, in particular, labor. And labor has to understand that Joe Biden, and I'm going to call him what he is, Genocide Joe, he can't serve two masters. His master is the ruling class, the military industrial complex. I don't care how many billions of dollars that he reduces in student loans. I don't care these empty gestures of I'm going to hold up sending these bombs. That's a bunch of BS. He's committed to U.S. imperialism and Zionism. And we have to understand that he is not on our side. I don't care what he says. We need to be on the side of the workers. We need to be on the side of the oppressed. We need to be on our side. And I would conclude by saying, free, free Palestine. Let Gaza be free. From Ferguson to Palestine, occupation is a crime. And we have a slogan long associated with the ILWU. It started with the Wobblies, the International Workers of the World. And it goes like this. An injury to one is an injury to all. An injury to one is an injury to all. Free, free Palestine. Thank you.